What's up, guys? This is Taking the Field with Stevie Mack, and on this episode, I'm joined by a now former Detroit Mercy Titans women's lacrosse player and a member of the U23 England national team, Emily Beazley. Emily, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, so this is an episode that I've been really looking forward to. We talked about getting on here and talking last week. We finally get around to doing so here today. So again, super excited to talk with you on this episode. So just to jump right into it, talk about your background in lacrosse, how you really got started with it, and how that sort of led you to Detroit Mercy over the last 4 years.
Yeah, so when I was little, both my older brothers played lacrosse. My dad was actually their coach, so I was kind of just like dragged along to practices and everything. And then, yeah, I just like fell in love with the sport at a young age. And then I would do Sunday pickup leagues with Dwayne, who's now our head coach at Detroit. So that was really cool. So I kind of grew up being taught by Dwayne since I was really little. And then I played on Michigan Cyclones for travel all the way up until my senior year of high school. And I went to Heartland High School, played there for 4 years. We were regional champs for 4 years and played in the state semifinals every single year. Never could get to state finals, but it was still a cool memory to be able to have that record with those players. And then Coach Marion actually recruited me to play my junior year of high school. And then I came to Detroit Mercy in the fall of 2018 and yeah, just graduated in May. So kind of all along that journey of elementary, middle school, high school, and college, I was always playing lacrosse. So yeah, that sport's been with me since I was really little and super grateful to be able to continue to play it.
Yeah, you talked about kind of starting that journey young back in elementary school. That's something that back earlier in the spring, I believe it was around February, I talked with some of your fellow senior classmates, Elise Harder and Claire Conway. They also mentioned getting back into it in elementary school. And I even told them, I'm jealous anytime somebody says that they got back into it that early because I didn't get really into it until high school. So looking back on it, I wish I could have gotten into it at that early age. And then you talked about head coach Dwayne Hicks and being involved with him from even a young age even. And I'm a youth lacrosse coach myself in here in Southeast Michigan, and it was funny because I remember last summer we went to a tournament out in Lansing, and I just remember I was looking around at one point between games, and I just spotted him across the field, and I was like, man, he really does. He's just one of those guys that loves being around the game, and I've talked to him here on the podcast a few times over the last year or two, so really awesome getting to talk with him when I've gotten the chance. So now we've talked about how you sort of got into the sport, how you wound up at Detroit Mercy. Now, what's probably one of your favorite memories that you had from playing over the last 4 years?
Oh gosh, there's so many, honestly. I think my favorite personal memory is coming and getting cleared back from having two hip surgeries. My first game was against Michigan, and I got a caused turnover and seeing the bench like just go absolutely crazy and like on the field rewatching it like literally brings tears to my eyes. Like getting that caused turnover and everyone just like losing their minds. Like that was so cool. I think that was a point in my lacrosse career where I was like, wow, I've like actually recovered and gotten myself back on my own 2 feet with the help of like the Detroit Mercy sports med teams and past trainers. Like that was just like a really cool memory to be like, okay, I've done it, and like have the support of my team in that process as well. That was really cool. And also to be able to play so many top schools this past season was just also incredible, and have that experience against girls that play on the senior teams that I've seen at the World Championship, which I thought was really cool as well. To be like, oh, I played against you in college. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah, and I know for me, this next year, actually 2023, will be most likely my last at Detroit Mercy after being here since just same as you, 2018. That was the first year that I actually started calling games for the women's lacrosse team. So it's funny because when you talk about games that you'll remember and things like that, this past spring I kind of started thinking about that myself. And one of the games that I'm sure I'll always remember is the game against Akron this year. and that second half comeback that you guys had. That game was an unreal game to call, and it was funny because even afterwards, I couldn't even believe that that happened, and it was just such a cool thing that I got to be a part of. So yeah, like I said, that's something that I feel like once it's all said and done, I'll always remember that game. So we've talked about your beginning in lacrosse. We've talked about some of your favorite memories from your time at Detroit Mercy. Now talk about your experience being a part of the England national team, and for maybe people that don't know, what's sort of the process that goes into being involved with something like that.
Yeah, so another funny kind of revelation was Dwayne actually got me involved with the England national team. So I'm a dual citizen. My entire family's English. So I'm the only one that is born out of England in my all extended family, my immediate family. So I qualify as being a passport holder. But Dwayne, yeah, was like, hey, I know your family's English. Like, you should email the coaches. He had played with some of the coaches that are on the staff right now when he played in Manchester. And so, yeah, I reached out to them. That was summer of 2019. And they invited me to trial in September of 2019. So I made the U23 team that September, flew back a couple of months before, of course, the pandemic hit to do some training camps. And then, yeah, 2020 and 2021 kind of was put on pause because of COVID. But I guess a blessing in disguise that that's when my surgeries were. So I didn't really miss much of the England season. And then this past January was my first time being back on the field. And that was my first time being back in England since COVID. So it was kind of a cool thing to be like cleared to be back on the field. And my first run was with the England national team. So seeing my teammates, they've been so supportive during that whole process as well. So yeah, that's kind of how I just got into it. So there's a couple of qualifications that to make the national team, you can have like grandparents, like kind of lineage, or passport holder, or living in the country for X amount of years. So I qualified right away being a passport holder. So super grateful for that opportunity. Yeah.
So now talk about the World Championships more specifically that were held about a week or two ago now. You got to participate in that, like I mentioned at the top of the show with the U23 team. Talk about that experience and playing in an event like that and also getting gold in that event with your team.
Yeah, it was such an unreal experience. So we were playing alongside the Senior World Cup. So days that or times that we didn't have games or practice, we were there supporting our senior teammates. So that was really incredible to see. And yeah, so we played multiple games. We had a couple of like warm up games with some U.S. collegiate players that had a team. And yeah, it was just a really amazing experience. Our team did extremely well. It was super, super hot. So I'm glad that my teammates were able to adjust to the climate because they're not really used to that hot Maryland weather. But yeah, it was super competitive. I felt that our team kept its intensity up like the entire time, regardless of what the score was. And it was really cool to, again, play with that England uniform on. It's just such a like surreal experience to be able to have a nation across your chest and represent something that's greater than yourself, and just everything building up to that moment of getting on the starting lineup for the first game was just, yeah, really cool. And super excited that I was able to experience that time playing and also like see how much dedication our parents put in. There were so many parents that were, you know, waving the England flag while we were playing, like our other teammates were cheering, and chants and kind of stuff, and seeing that kind of also what I want to end up doing is being on the senior team and seeing like that stage of play as well. And also like being in the stands and supporting them through all their matches. And the bronze medal match was just incredible. And just being like, wow, I want to be there one day. It was a bunch of my teammates and I talked about it on the bus ride home. Like, it's unreal how popular and supportive lacrosse has become, especially the women's side. Like seeing those stands almost filled for any of the matches, and especially the medal matches, was just incredible. And it's been so cool to see just the growth of the sport as well, especially in the East Coast, and how many little girls there were there, like wanting autographs and stuff. Like that was a cool experience to watch the seniors like do autographs, take pictures, and yeah, it was just like so cool. You know, you never think that you'd be in that position to witness all of that and also play for a country. But yeah, it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, and I know for you actually being there in that moment and like you said, kind of seeing it for yourself, I feel like is just indescribable and you did a great job of kind of walking us through it for people that weren't there. And I know for me specifically kind of watching from home on social media and watching the games on ESPN and ESPN Plus and all that, it was just a really cool thing to see and to see teams like the US with a lot of the notable names that you hear in women's lacrosse, and especially some of the names that just came out of college, especially too, and what they were able to do from start to finish, and just a really cool event overall. And it actually made me kind of disappointed that I didn't get to be there and see it for myself. Something that I think is kind of, if you're a lacrosse person, it's kind of like one of those bucket list things where you have to go and just experience it. And just kind of funny that you mentioned the summer heat in Maryland in July. I mean, I went to the PLL weekend in Baltimore last summer in the middle of July, and yeah, it was easily 90 degrees every day there. So yeah, it's no joke there in Baltimore. But you kind of touched on it in that last response. You talked about someday hoping to be a part of that senior national team. So what do you think is next for you in terms of maybe your playing career as far as playing with the national team moving forward?
Yeah, I just think that's a goal of mine, especially with the sixes format that's being introduced and trying to hopefully get lacrosse in the 2028 Olympics. So to be able to have this opportunity, I think my mindset is like it's such a rare opportunity to have. Like I need to work my butt off to do it. So a lot of conditioning, a lot of strength training. I think it also translates into like seeing the difference between like playing college lacrosse and having those opportunities to play games twice a week, and now being an alumni, but thankfully being able to play abroad while I get my master's. Also just like making sure that fitness is the top of my priority list, and making sure that it's more keeping myself accountable, but also being motivated by my teammates. I think that's going to be the big difference. I've kind of, when our season ended in May, I kind of felt so lost, being like, I don't have to get up at 5 a.m. to go to practice. Like, are you sure? So making sure that like I understand that these next goals of mine are self-motivated, but also I'm backed by a huge community, being on the national team as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Emily, I want to thank you again for joining me on this episode. Make sure to like, comment, and share on this episode, guys. You can also find the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, including Google, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and Stitcher, just to name a few. Emily, once again, thanks for joining me on this episode.
Thank you so much.
All right. Yep, that'll do it for me and Emily. We'll talk to you guys later.